My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you're here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask your pardon for my sins and grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Jesus, I want to wish you a Merry Christmas. That might seem strange to wish you, for whom we are celebrating these magnificent feasts, that we should offer you Merry Christmas, because it seems more like a greeting that we should give to one another. But I find myself saying that to friends and family and people who I care about. And so I feel like I should share that greeting with you too, even though it mightn't be the right way of expressing it. Jesus, I want to thank you for this magnificent feast of Christmas that we're celebrating, and to wish that you would enjoy that feast that you would partake in my joy, in my own home, with my family, that you would be part of our celebrations, and that the merriness of Christmas would truly come from you. Today we have in the Gospel a story, at least to my mind, of longing and waiting and being fulfilled. Now, it brings me back to whenever I was a child. I got an atlas one time, kind of one of these interactive books that didn't just talk about the countries and where they were, but kind of gave information about them and interesting facts. And I remember there was one section that had the wonders of the world. Now, as a child, when you think about the wonders of the world, these are incredible things that we have to see and explore and see for ourselves, and that we can't just see them purely in books, but they're enough to give us a taste. But of course, they seem so far away to us, because if our parents can't take us there in an afternoon, then it must be something that we have to do when we grow up, when we get bigger, and it becomes something that we long to see the wonders of the world, whatever they might be. And I was fascinated by the pyramids. I think all children, well, probably all young boys, go through a kind of an Egyptians phase, where we're kind of interested in mummies and hieroglyphics and all things Egyptian. And the pyramids stood out for me as being kind of a symbol of the Egyptians and everything that was exciting and interesting about them. And I dearly wanted to see these pyramids one day, but of course I thought, well, when will I ever get the opportunity? Well, the opportunity came 2 years ago. Just by sheer chance, where I was in the world at the time meant that it was quite easy to get to Cairo. And so I had the opportunity, which was not to be missed, to go to see the pyramids. So I went to Cairo. Very interesting city, chaotic in many ways, but very interesting, well worth seeing. And I had a list of things that I wanted to see, but right at the top was certainly the pyramids at Giza. So I had it all arranged that on day 3 of my trip to Cairo, I went to see the pyramids. So I went in the morning, a car came and picked me up with a guide to take me there and to explain the whole thing to me, to kind of bring it alive. And one thing about Cairo, if you've been, you'll know that traffic is absolutely impossible. So it takes ages to get out of the city, but of course when you're on an adventure, that just makes the whole thing more exciting. So you get out of the city eventually, and you make your way past all these buildings and everything until finally you get to see the sand, and you realize that we're kind of in the desert here. We're getting closer to what I imagine where the pyramids are. So eventually, after probably about, I don't know, half an hour in the car, we arrive at Giza, the place where the pyramids are. And the guide was kind of talking about it and getting me ready. And I remember getting out of the car and seeing the pyramids for the first time, and actually feeling a bit underwhelmed, to be quite frank. These are pyramids that I had longed to see. The image was very firmly ingrained in my mind from an early age, but they just couldn't take my breath away, I have to say. Maybe, I don't know, it was a kind of a dull day, or maybe we build these things up too much in our mind, and when we actually see them, yeah, it just didn't kind of match up. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's impressive, but it wasn't quite how I imagined it as a child. Anyway, part of the visit to the pyramids is to actually go inside one of them. So you can make your way through the pyramid to the burial chamber, which is at the very heart of it. Now, I'm a tall person, so you imagine these burial chambers are kind of not, even though the pyramids are very big, the burial chambers themselves are not particularly big, so you have to climb down these very narrow shafts and kind of bow and bend low in order to get in. And you have to kind of go down, and you go along, and then you go up. Anyway, it's not that pleasant an experience, but kind of worth it, because you think, what am I going to see when I get here? What treasures await? So after you crawl your way through the pyramid, you get into the center of the pyramid for which the whole thing exists, and you find there's absolutely nothing there at all. So unfortunately for me, my big trip to the pyramids, yes, I enjoyed it, it was well worth it. It wasn't like I had imagined it as a child. It didn't fulfill all my deepest longings. No, we have a very different story in our gospel today. We have Simeon, an upright and devout man, which in biblical language means a man who fulfilled the duties of the law according to the letter and the spirit, a good and pious man who was faithful to the commands, a man who was not only dependable, but a man who was deeply religious, a man of conviction, a man whose life was based upon the living out of his faith. Two things which we ought to aspire to: being faithful and being pious. And he was led by the Holy Spirit to understand and to know that he would see the Christ, the long-awaited one who will save his people from their sins, and who would become in turn a light to all of the nations. Now, what an honor it was for Simeon that day, at the prompting of the Holy Spirit, to go to the temple in Jerusalem at the moment when Mary and Joseph were presenting you there, baby Jesus, in the temple. What an honor for him to be there, to meet your mother, to meet St. Joseph, our Father and Lord, but to take you as a baby Jesus into his arms. What an honor that none of us will have, except maybe in a spiritual sense, but to physically be there with the Holy Family in that moment. What an honor and what a joy. And we know that Simeon was so fulfilled by this encounter, which wasn't, of course, a chance encounter at all. It was perfectly planned out through the wisdom of the Holy Spirit, that he should be there in this moment to fulfill the promise. He was so fulfilled by this that he makes this beautiful hymn of praise to God, which essentially says that having seen the child Jesus, he can now go in peace. He can die. He can die in peace because he is completely and totally fulfilled. All his life's longing was in this moment completely fulfilled, to hold the baby Jesus in his arms. Now, Master, you can let your servant go in peace, just as you promised, because my eyes have seen the salvation which you have prepared for all the nations, a light to enlighten the pagans and the glory of your people Israel. Well, baby Jesus filled all of the longings that Simeon had in his heart. Jesus, you fulfill all of our longings. If we have a desire that is not fulfilled by you, then we don't need it. It could be a material thing that we feel we need it. It could be a physical thing, or a promotion at our work, or a place to live which is a little bit better, or whatever. But all those longings and desires that we have, if they are not ultimately fulfilled by you, then they are useless to us. Even sometimes we might confuse them for a spiritual longing. It's a desire to acquire a certain virtue, or it's a desire to pray in a particular way. But if that's not ultimately fulfilled by you, then it's taking us down the wrong path. We need to be able to pick you up, baby Jesus, like the little crib figure that we have in our churches or in our homes, or wherever we are centering our prayer at this moment around your crib, to take you into our arms and to see in this little statue, which represents you, all that we need. Our complete and total desire is fulfilled in you. And to say, as we look at you, baby Jesus, you are enough for us. You are all I need. You are enough for me. And if we can transfer that as a prayer in the same way that Simeon made, about a little figurine, a little crib figure, to think about the Eucharist, when we receive you, Jesus, in Holy Communion, if we were able to have that prayer in our heart, well, it could do us a lot of good. That we could take you as it is into our arms, and to thank you, and to say that you're all that we need. That the Eucharist, whenever I receive you, Jesus, really and truly present in the Blessed Sacrament, that's what I need. And that I have the same faith as Simeon to make that proclamation of praise. You are the one that I need. Joseph and Mary, you're a big part of this story too, of course. Well, help us to come closer to Jesus in the way that you brought Jesus to Simeon. Bring Jesus closer to us. Bring him into our homes, into our lives, in order that we can see in him the light that we need, the life that we need, everything that we need is fulfilled in him. I give you thanks, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations which you have communicated to me during this meditation. I ask your help to put them into effect. My Mother Immaculate, St. Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.